To kick off the show, I have two sponsors I need to shout out. The first one is Wine Cats, two beautiful women in Vegas doing curated wine experiences. Add them on Instagram at WineCatsMeow to find out about their upcoming events. They have one coming up October 25th, but it's sold out already, so follow them to find out when their next curated experience is. I've been, and it's an amazing experience that you don't want to miss. The next sponsor is New Vintage Boutique by Tristin Mays. At Tristin Mays on Instagram. Handcrafted charcuterie boards, home decor, art, vintage, pre-loved clothing, and more. Check her out at newvintageboutique.com and add her on Instagram at Tristin Mays. Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in. This is Christopher Glennon, and this...
Christopher Glennon.
He's known as C2, and I'm known as C1, and together this is The Christopher Show. So today we have several topics on the agenda. We're going to get started by rolling into... talking about this nation. Some of what we're going to talk about is political, but I want to talk about this nation and how it was founded, because I think too often we get caught up in majority rules or elections and things like that and trying to manipulate the election so only our party wins. And so with that, I know that when this nation was founded, it was founded with everybody providing input, whether it was city dwellers, rural dwellers, whether it was Federalist, whether it was people that wanted states' rights, they wanted to keep rights for the states. But it was literally everybody tossing into the founding of this country, the Constitution, and then they had the Federalist Papers that went through and kind of explained what was happening with this country. And I think today we get too focused on one party dominating the other, whether it's Republicans dominating Democrats or Democrats dominating Republicans. What are some of your thoughts on that?
I agree with that completely. I mean, we need more compromise in this country. It's never just one side wins all. It should be compromise and hearing both sides out, hearing their opinions, hearing their reasoning behind their opinions. Because if I just, go to you, hey, I want this because I want it, it doesn't give you a reason as to why I want that. It doesn't make any sense to you as to why I want, $10 from you. But if you give a good reason behind it, it might become more reasonable to you. If I said I needed $10 to go buy myself lunch today, if I needed $10 to make an investment, it would make more sense. You'd be a little bit more willing to give that.
Well, and the other thing is, I think that we talk about generations. I mean, you're the next generation. I'm the generation Gen X. And so we've got to be able to talk across generations as well to make sure that both generations are being taken care of. And that's kind of why we're doing the show together, is we want to provide some insight and some perspective from your perspective and some from my perspective and see where those blend together. And both of us are conservatives, but we have a little different perspective on conservatism. And so not just with the conservatism, we also want to mention some of the liberal talking points, because I think liberals have some good agendas as well. And too often I see mainstream media distorting those things so that they can control with fear. And there's too much fear. I was on OAN recently, and I talked about I prefer a position of strength. I want something where it's from a position of knowledge, not something from a position of being afraid. So yeah, I think that it's very important that we have both sides of the political spectrum, whether it's Democrat and Republican, whether it's liberal and conservative, or whether it's city dwellers versus rural dwellers. I mean, you need different things in the city than what you do in the rural. And you've been to Alabama with me. I mean, what are your thoughts about some of the things that happened there? I mean, you've gone by yourself as well.
Yeah, I mean, I went on a cross-country road trip 2 years ago by myself. It was beautiful. I loved getting to see it, all that this country had to offer, the Great Plains and, the North, Midwest kind of area, like North Dakota, South Dakota, as well as getting to see the more greenery and trees that Alabama has to offer. You're right, though. They are completely different from San Diego kind of weather. We're not, mainly highways. We're mainly highways here. You don't have a lot of places to go foot traffic-wise. If you're wanting to go somewhere, you have to take a bus, you have to take a car, you have to take a trolley. Out there, I mean, I remember going out with my cousins just into the woods just to go play around and have fun, but you don't really get that opportunity out here.
Well, and you have all that space because you have, like you said, the houses are spaced further apart and things like that. Out here, you have more of apartment buildings, you have complexes, you have huge communities and things like that clear out the trees. So if you want to do that kind of stuff, you have to drive out to the desert an hour east, or you have to go to the Grand Canyon up north there. We have Julian as well, so you can go up that way, but you've got to drive somewhere to get that kind of space that you get in Alabama. And so with that being said, there are different rules that apply for living in a rural area versus the rules that apply for living in a city area. You don't have as many places in a city that you can just go out. Like, you can't go out to your backyard and just shoot a gun, but in Alabama, you could literally go out in your backyard and hunt for something during the winter. So there are practical needs for a gun there in terms of hunting and trapping and things like that happen in Alabama. So again, the rules are different, and that's an extreme example of city versus country, but it's also liberal versus conservative. When you get where you're in a bigger community like we are in San Diego or Los Angeles or Las Vegas, where you're in the compact areas, then you have a different set of rules that apply. You can't just fire a gun for no reason. You have to go find a shooting range. You have to go, again, go outside of the city or
Go
whatever.
out to the desert.
Yeah, so I think our country's gotten too focused on one side dominating the other when we absolutely need rules that fit for both. So that's my take on that. I mean, even if you look at our generation, we were talking about generations. My superhero is Superman, Marvel universe, DC universe, and then you've got Naruto. You have anime.
In our generation, we have anime. We have Naruto, Goku, One Piece, and that's just to name a couple. Those are like kind of like the big three area. And we also have Bleach. That's the other one. But I mean, that's what should be able to unite the younger folks with the older folks is more of the fact that, hey, we grow up on the same moral stuff being taught to us through animation, through comic books, through manga. It's the same lessons we're learning, but, through different ways.
Yeah, and without the pandemic, I wouldn't even know Naruto. I mean, I watched Naruto during that, and Naruto's a really good series, but I know that there are a bunch of anime that a lot of kids your age, like when you go to the gym, I know when you go to the gym, you see other people wearing things like the Akatsuki attire and things like that. What kind of anime do you see a lot of people that they flock to? What are some of the top ones? I know Naruto, obviously, but
Naruto, Goku, those are going to be your major ones. You also have One Piece, which is up to like 1,000 episodes now, and they're finally getting back toward the main canon. I guess it was something where like the last 1,000 episodes apparently didn't matter toward the main point of that show or something like that. But I mean, you have those main ones. You see people with tattoos of them now. You see people wearing. I mean, I have a Gara backpack, and I've gotten so many compliments from that being at the gym. I have that as my gym bag, and people walk up to me like, "Yo, dude, I love that backpack. It's so cool. Like, where did you get it?" And
well, and you even have a tattoo on your arm that merged together your basketball with Naruto, which was your favorite anime at the time. So it's very much a part of our culture now, and it's definitely grown bigger over the years, is what I've noticed. And so you have Marvel and DC that are for the older generation. This is just showing different animations that we have, but there are different values that we have. I grew up, obviously, in the 80s and 90s. You grew up in the 2000s and 2010s. I'm a Gen Xer. You're a Gen Zillennial, I guess a combination of Z and Millennial, or what do you call yourself?
It's a weird little mixed group where we grew up with a lot of the same stuff that millennials had, where we weren't the iPad generation. We didn't grow up with iPads on our phone, at 2 years old or anything like that. But we did.
No, you grew up with Monsters Inc. every frickin' day that you came to my house.
No, but we grew up, with still having flip phones, but, having those kind of phones instead of where you're having to, yeah, exactly, having to text, what was it, 2-3 times just to get the letter C.
Yeah.
But we grew up with that kind of stuff the same way millennials did, but we kind of grew into what Gen Z had, where they began to get the iPads and the iPhones, and we began to get that stuff. So it's a part of like what we grew up with, but not all of that we grew up with.
And that goes back to what we were talking about politically speaking, where your generation needs to provide some input for what's going on, but my generation needs to provide input as well. And I know that when I was young, we were always taught to look to our elders for wisdom, and you absolutely should. But I also think that the wise ones need to also take into account some of the things that's happening from the next generation, what they're experiencing, what they're encountering, and take that into account as they go. And I mean, that even goes on to social media, if we want to talk about that. My social media was MySpace, then Facebook, and now Instagram. I'm on Instagram more than I am on other things. And now YouTube and podcast and things like that. But your generation is TikTok, right?
We grew up on Vine, which was 6-second videos, 9-second videos or something like that.
7 seconds.
7 seconds, that's what it was. But we grew up on that, and we eventually lost it. I can't remember when we did, maybe 2011 or 12. But we lost it, didn't have that anymore. We had Instagram, that was our main fallback. But then TikTok came out, and that's where we all kind of flocked to, because it kind of gave us that same sense back when Vine was around of, you get short second clips that are keeping your attention, and then you go on to the next one.
Yeah, keeping your attention. That's exactly it. 7-second clips is about how long your attention lasts. But anyway, going on to Instagram versus TikTok. And if we take that and circle that back to political even, you look at some of the things as far as the differences. I've been censored on Facebook. I've been censored on Instagram. I've been censored on Twitter. I've been censored time and again on social media because I have a conservative viewpoint. And again, I don't know that we should exercise censorship as much as we have. And as evidenced by the Twitter files that recently came out, the government was very much intervening. And I'm not talking about just the Biden administration. I mean, the
FBI.
health officials, health government officials, which means Fauci was involved. And then the FBI, they were dominating it as well. And so they were telling tech what to censor and what not to censor and what message they should put out.
I mean, they censored anyone who mentioned about the Hunter Biden laptop
Oh,
back when that was
100%.
coming out.
Right during the time of the election, 2020. I mean, they deleted anything. I mean, it was New York Post that got deleted, right?
Yep.
So what do you see on TikTok that's different from these censorship platforms?
I mean, we don't see too much censorship, to be honest with you. I mean, a lot of it is still the people getting to post what they want. Like, for example, back in March and April, going into May even a little bit, there were protests that were going on in Paris because the prime minister, I think his name's Macron.
Macron.
Yeah, Macron. He had raised the age of retirement from 65 to 67 using a Napoleon-era rule, Napoleon-era law kind of thing. And he didn't take an election on it. He didn't take a vote on it. He just did it himself so they could have people working for longer for their life.
And to your point, that wasn't on mainstream media a lot. That was on the channels. You had to go, like, even on Instagram, I didn't see things about that until I actively went looking for the hashtag that you gave me that you had off of TikTok.
Even then, I mean, if you went onto Instagram back then and just typed in Paris, it was, pretty girls in Paris, girl with her boyfriend in
Clearly,
Paris.
you were typing in Paris to see all the pretty girls you could
Yes,
find.
of course. No, but you typed in Paris and you saw the Eiffel Tower, or you'd see scenery kind of photos. But if you went on TikTok and typed in Paris, the first thing that would pop up was Paris protest, and that's where you're seeing the streets littered with trash for 2 months straight because people who were the garbage takers basically went on strike and was like, we're not doing this job anymore, until he goes ahead and lowers it back.
Were they called the Yellow Coats or something like that? Or did they have a name for their group? Do you remember?
I can't recall off the top of my head.
All right. I can swear they had some kind of name and that they like you said, they were revolting because he did that. And I mean, that doesn't sound like a lot of extra time to work 2 years. But the reality is my mom just retired this year in January, as you know, grandma did. Yeah. And so when she retired, I mean, I look at it, she's 66 now. She gets to do some of those things that she's wanted to do. She worked in a chicken plant for 40 years. And I mean, if that's a lot of the workers, like you're talking about the garbage truck drivers, but a lot of them are factory workers that have been contributing to the huge profits of corporate America. And so they put in their 40 years, and then you tell them they have to work 2 more when they've already been paying into Social Security for 40 years. And some of those people, you look at your lifespans. My uncle passed away at 69 or whatever. My dad passed away at 67, 68. And you start looking at people that are passing away that age. So they worked their whole freaking life and they get 1 or 2 years of Social Security after paying into it for 40 years. Yep. It makes no sense. And so this goes back again, and I'm conservative, Republican, and I have seen where the Republicans try to restrict Social Security. I've seen the Democrat point. So there is a point that the Democrats have in that. But we need to protect the elderly in that regard. And that's where conservatism and liberals can balance each other out and go, hey, here's a good point. But what's happened now, we had someone that was going to be on the show today, and I sent him the script. And as soon as the people that were producing another show that he has found out, they said, well, you can't be on that show. There's no way, because they saw that I'm political. And they're like, you can't have politics in that, because he's going to be interviewing athletes and celebrities and things like that. And so they're going to distance themselves from him if he puts that out there. So so we have that kind of thing that's creating these echo chambers. And so with TikTok, do you see a lot of liberal viewpoints on there as well, or is it primarily conservative?
No, it's both. I mean, there's a kid named Harry. I can't remember
Sisson.
His full name right now. But
it's Harry Sisson.
Harry Sisson?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
It's something like that. I don't know if it's pronounced French or not. Maybe it's just Harry Sisson.
But he provides a lot of the liberal talking points, and then there are other
Oh, yeah,
guys.
that's definitely Harry. I've seen him.
Yeah. Yeah.
His stuff makes it over to Instagram now.
It does make it to both ways. But again, that's where you're seeing the censorship on Instagram that you're not seeing on TikTok. Because on TikTok, though, you have other people. You have Cam Higbee, who provides a more right-leaning kind of perspective. You have, multiple other people that you can look for and look at who are providing more of that right information kind of side.
Yeah, the right-wing stuff. And let's say this. You have TikTok. I'm sorry, not Instagram. Twitter is now the same thing. Thank God for Elon.
Honestly.
Because Twitter had become the same. I've been censored on Twitter, but not anymore. After Elon got it back, my account got unlocked because it was locked for political reasons. They didn't want certain agenda items to be discussed during the pandemic, and so they continued to push their own narrative. You see it in mainstream media, and mainstream media is both sides, conservative and liberal. They're literally pissing their people off on purpose so they can profit from it. CNN,
100%.
Fox, MSNBC, holy cow.
And to go back to the Paris thing, you didn't hear about that on any CNN or Fox News media. You didn't hear about both the elderly and the young people coming together to protest what the prime minister had done.
So our government officials are talking about restricting TikTok, which is a free speech platform, and Twitter, which is a free speech platform. They're talking about censoring it or shutting it down or shutting down certain elements of it because it's China owned. And my statement about that is, yeah, they don't want China to have our private information, but come on, Facebook's getting my private information every fucking day. Twitter gets my private information. If I go on foxnews.com, they get my private CNN.
I mean, your Alexa's always listening.
What is private information anymore? And you can't tell me that I have anything that Chinese is like, ooh, I'm going to go ahead and take you out. I'm a political, political contributor. I've been on OAN News, but I'm not significant, and I'm no more significant to them than I am to Facebook, except Facebook will censor me. And clearly, if TikTok is still ran by China, they won't. We interrupt this show for just a moment so I can acknowledge two sponsors. The first one is the Merchant Card Group. If your business needs payment processing services, hit me up and I'll give you a referral code. With my referral code, send them your invoice, and if they can't beat your current cost, they will give you $500. That's how confident they are they can beat your cost. That offer is good this month only, so hit them up now. It expires October 31st, 2023. You can reach me at CA Glennon on Instagram in the description below. Twitter won't censor me. And so you look at the Twitter files that came out, and they talk about the FBI and the way the FBI was engaging with them and telling them what they could and couldn't post, and the Biden administration and officials within the administration. It was censorship of free speech.
It was 1984.
Yeah, and thank God I had you read those books when you were younger. I had you read that. I had you read Animal Farm, so that you could recognize it when it was happening, the legitimate censorship live in real time.
And to see it live was crazy because, I mean, I remember reading that book, and it had one part where the 11-year-old child reported his parents to the thought police because of something that the parents, said, kind of thing. And then you look at Instagram and, Twitter, and you're seeing videos where the daughter's recording her mom's point of view on, a certain topic, and now her mom loses her job because of that point of view being released.
Oh man, speaking of that has gotten me. It's called doxing people. Basically, if you comment on your political view, someone can call your job and post that you posted something on Twitter or Instagram and get you fired. How outrageous is that, man?
Just because you have a political opinion that's different than your company's.
It shouldn't come to that. That, again, comes down to free speech. Your company doesn't rule your thought. And that's what it has come to, is there are some companies that are literally like, well, if you're going to put that out there. I remember a girl was a hairstylist, or she worked at a salon, and she got fired because she posted a conservative viewpoint during the pandemic. It was already tough enough to get a job. And so this is after they'd started to give jobs back in California. And so it's tough enough to get a job. And so she posted a conservative viewpoint. One of her clients saw it, reported it to her company fired her. I mean, you've now put someone on the unemployment line that was willing to work. And during the pandemic, there were a lot of people that were like, just give me that free check.
Yeah, 100%. I knew tons of people.
So I remember friends that were business owners that had a hard time getting people back to work. You had someone that wanted to work and she couldn't work because of her viewpoint. It shouldn't come to that ever for a business. And that comes down to you. I mean, if you look at Ukraine and Russia, there are a lot of people that support Ukraine and a lot of people that support not sending them more money. It's not saying they support Russia. They're just like, hey, let them figure their own shit out. That's their area. We wouldn't be happy with someone telling us what Mexico should or shouldn't do with us.
Yeah.
We wouldn't be happy with someone telling us what Canada should or shouldn't do with us. If Russia's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that, or if Russia wanted to go establish a base in Canada or Mexico or Cuba, we'd be pissed about that. But we expect Russia to be okay when we go and establish a base in Ukraine.
I mean, wasn't that the whole point of the Cold War? Was that Russia had established a base on Cuba?
No, basically the Cold War, I mean, it started before that even, and I'd have to go back in history and look, but you're looking at shortly after World War II. It was a difference of opinion. And so you're looking at, I think, even the early 50s, where you have Vietnam, you have Korea. Korea was in 53, I think, and so you have communist Korea, you have non-communist or capitalist Korea, so you have North Korea, South Korea. You have Germany that got split up after World War II into the Soviet side, and then you have the French part, the British part, the American part. I remember learning about those growing up, and then obviously the Berlin Wall came down in 1988 and reunited them, but between 1945 and 1988, which is when the Berlin Wall came down, you had a lot of stuff that had to happen. Gorbachev spoke with Reagan back in like 1983, 84, and you saw a lot of that start coming down. And so, yeah, with Ukraine and Russia, I mean, when you start taking sides on that, people are still viewing Russia as though it's the old Soviet Union. And you may not like Putin, but clearly some of his people do, and he's in power there, whether it's by might or by right. He's in power there. So you have to respect that he's still the ruler of a sovereign nation. And we want to dictate to them by pushing into Ukraine and telling Putin, be okay with us having a military base here, be okay with NATO being here. And there was a treaty that was signed where we were never supposed to go into Eastern Europe to give Russia that due respect. So we're imposing on nations and expecting them to continue to say nothing.
Yeah.
So, but going back and pulling that back to what we were talking about before that, it's like you can't have a free speech opinion without your job being in danger. I know I've commented sometimes and someone's like, oh, screenshot that and send it to his boss or whatever. And it's like, bro, come on, get out of here. I mean,
it's ridiculous. You don't have free speech anymore because it can be reported to your higher ups and now you don't have a job.
Or they want to say free speech has consequences. If it has consequences, then it's not free speech. So I don't support everything anybody says, but I absolutely support their right to say it, even if they're a fucking idiot. I don't care. Like, you're allowed to say what you want and to get that out there. So if people support Ukraine, if they support Russia, I mean, we have Russian citizens in our nation. We have citizens in this nation whose origin is from Russia. Do we expect them to be anti-Russia? So it's one of those things where I had a friend, she would go back and forth to Russia because that was still her home. That's where she grew up and things like that. She was an American citizen, but she still loved Russia. And that was before Russia invaded Ukraine and all that, but all the same. Do I expect her to hate Russia just because they invaded Ukraine? No, because that's her heritage. And there's a lot of history to that region. So going back to free speech, it's got to be free speech. And if you want another instance of free speech being attacked, look at President Trump right now and what he's facing for saying that the election was rigged. He has free speech to say that, but because he's saying it, mainstream media keeps calling it a lie. They've sold it as the big lie. Let me say this. The 2020 election, wasn't proven that there was no fraud. It was never investigated as to whether there was fraud or not. Those are two completely different things.
100%.
So President Trump, who was a competitor in an election, isn't allowed to say that the election was rigged.
He's
when
not allowed
he was
to
president at
question
the time.
The legitimacy of it.
So yeah, I mean, it baffles me in terms of calling it a big lie and trying to propagandize that. And let's be real about propaganda. It's propaganda, whether it's left-wing propaganda or right-wing propaganda. It's propaganda on both sides. I don't believe everything Trump says, but I think that he absolutely has a right to question an election.
Of course.
So let's circle it back. And so this nation, again, should be everybody having input. And instead, you have things like Trump trying to be shut down. You have Biden calling Trump supporters MAGA extremists, not just MAGA anymore. They're now adding the word extremist. Chuck Schumer did it. I see congressional people doing it. I even see rhinos calling them MAGA to separate them out. So you have people that keep asking for a third party. MAGA is not the first third party that's there. You have what they considered the squad on the left for years during Trump's. And every time a third party tries to rise, whether it's the Green Party, whether it's the squad, or whether it's MAGA, the two parties unite, the Democrats and Republicans both, and they start calling them extremist. And you can't keep doing that if you want everybody to have a say in our government. And listen, I don't believe everything AOC says. I think that she has a lot of extremist kind of stuff, and she's said some really dumb shit over the years. But I do think that we should worry about how we impact the climate. I've said this. It's not that I believe in climate change. It's that I believe in environmental responsibility. Again, a weakness versus a strength. I'd rather come from a position of strength with environmental responsibility instead of, ooh, the climate's going to kill us.
And the one spot where I definitely agree with AOC is where she partnered up with Matt Gaetz to come up with the Pelosi Act, where people in Congress and their families, their immediate families, can no longer invest in the stock market.
And they absolutely shouldn't be able to pivot and to swivel to that. Holy cow. Pelosi made a lot of money off of the stock market and insider trading.
I'm sorry, her net worth now is like 147 million or something like that, and on $100,000 salary. Explain how that works to
$170,000 salary. I know, I agree. And she can't. I'm sorry. I've been trading and investing for a long time. There's no way you can pick that many winners without some insider information. And I've studied the stock market for the last 150 years through J.P. Morgan, through Vanderbilt, and all the tycoons that manipulated their stocks or whatever. If you're getting that wealthy, it's because of insider information. And don't get me wrong, there are some people that are able to do. Even Soros. I read Soros. He did something that the common person wouldn't be able to do. He literally shorted the German pound, I think it was, back in the 70s. Like, no person in their normal capacity could ever short a currency enough to wind up winning that equation. But the British government was trying to prop it up, and he said, no, you're going to fall. And so he kept attacking until it fell. Tell me what normal individual can attack a country so much that he causes their currency to fall. And then he reaps all of the benefits of doing that. So it's not just the government that he screwed in that equation. He screwed the people, because now the power or the strength of the pound is diminished as well. So I'm not a fan of the Soroses. I'm not a fan of the Kochs either. The Kochs are the conservative equivalent of Soros, and they've done some things as well that are a bit questionable in nature. So, but again, going back to what you said with Pelosi Act. So the Pelosi Act stops Congress from investing and their family members, their immediate family members, because they touch on policies.
Yep. They know what policy is going to affect what business and which way. And when you have that kind of information in the back of your head, you already know that you're investing into this company and pulling out of that one because it's going to affect this company even better.
Yeah. Well, and that's like, I saw something the other day that said right before the Hamas attack on Israel, and they've probably been doing it for the last couple of years, but a lot of Congress members had invested in military type stocks, the ones that have arms, that are going to be selling arms to either Hamas or Israel or Ukraine. I mean, we continue to provide funding for Ukraine to buy weapons. So who's reaping the benefits from that? Well, the companies that provide defense systems. And so when we talk about sending money to Ukraine, we're not just sending money to them, we're sending weapons to them, which then allows our Congress to manipulate their stock portfolios.
Yep.
So to your point, which was Matt Gaetz and AOC both came together, even though they were on opposite sides of the aisle, and they said, hey, let's stop this crap because they shouldn't be benefiting from the insider information. And that's like Adam Schiff. I think he was worth like $1 million before the pandemic, or before he started attacking Trump. And after attacking Trump, he's worth like $70 million in a matter of 5 years.
Yeah.
Don't tell me there's not some activity going on there. His stock portfolio grew to $20 million when he had a $1 million net worth, like before he started attacking Trump. Like that kind of stuff, it lets you know that there's a lot going on. And I can say that because of all of the history that I've read. Again, with Vanderbilt and all those guys, they were manipulating congressional people, and they were in the pockets of Congress back then. And it hasn't changed over the course of the last 140 years, because at 1880, 1890, 1900, they were manipulating congressional people. So going back to what this whole thing is about, again, it's about everybody providing input, and thank God we have people like Matt Gaetz and AOC who at least had common sense enough to agree on that. And that's the cool thing, is when you have two sides of extremism, if they agree on something, then it's probably for the betterment of society, because they have so many differences that for them to come together and to be able to discuss something peacefully, it's
Exactly, and that's where you're seeing that compromise between both sides. I mean, they're both newer representatives. I mean, Matt Gaetz is in, his second term, I want to say. AOC is probably in her third, but, they're still freshly new into their position, and it's where you're seeing that they're coming together to try and make the country better as a whole and trying to stop the corruption that they see from within.
Yeah, and hopefully, hopefully we can figure out how to bridge that gap more as we go forward in society, and more people from the city I really think someone said it best. The people from the city, I can't remember who said it, but I think it may have been Henry Ford. It was Henry Ford. He said the people from the city should visit the country and the people from the country should visit the city so they understand each other better. He said people that work in a factory should work on a farm and people that work on a farm should work in a factory so they understand each other better. You need to switch positions in life every once in a while. So with that said, we're wrapping up our first episode. I want to thank everybody for watching The Christopher Show. This is Christopher Glennon, my son, C2. I am C1, and this has been The Christopher Show. Thank you for tuning in. Algo Factory empowers you to build your own custom algorithmic trading plan that fits your personality, your schedule, and your needs. I've done crypto trading, day trading, and long-term investments. These guys are here to help you succeed. No computer programming knowledge is necessary. It works in all asset classes. The link is in the description below, www.algofactory.tech. Click on it below.